What's up, guys? This is Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall market. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or use my QR code right here to sign up. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposits $10,000 to get $300 worth of Nvidia stock, or deposit $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia. You're also going to qualify for a 3.6% APY base rate plus a 4.5% APY extra for 3 months, making the total APY an 8.1% APY. The offer ends very soon, so please use my link down below to sign up. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with the market. So we're getting this massive gap down in the market is dipping. I mentioned that we had this wedge that was forming. My prediction was that we would see some consolidation and eventually a dip lower to fill this gap to 677. I said if that failed us, we're looking for 672 as our target. SPY touched 673, coming very close, and overall we're still looking quite weak. So if we want to bounce, okay, we need to see this thing get back above 678. If SPY could hold above 678, we're looking for an attempt for 681. But if we can't hold above that, if we don't get back above 678, we're looking at support over here around this 674 area. So this is resistance becoming support near 674. If 674 does not hold, we could be dumping back down to 672 or below. And then we're going to see what kind of reaction we get after that. So watch that very closely, and we're going to have to see what happens. When it comes to our economic calendar, just keep in mind that today is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. At 10:10 a.m., we have the Economic Optimism Index report, which may cause some volatility, alongside the New York Fed Treasury purchases at 10:30 a.m. So watch and see what happens with that data coming out. Besides that, the initial jobless claims or the JOLTS job numbers, all that data is not going to be coming out because of the government shutdown, unfortunately, which is still continuing. But speaking of the government shutdown, I'm seeing some news coming out that, some of these politicians claim that they're optimistic that there's going to be something coming very soon, some kind of funding bill. We'll see how that ends up going. But as of right now, the shutdown prevails, and it's not the best of news for everyday Americans. Once again, Palantir had its earnings. They did relatively well, beating expectations, and they raised their guidance for the fourth quarter, which is great news for them. And their the full year guidance is also doing quite well. However, the share price is not doing as well as results. At the end of the day, we started seeing a nice pump and dump afterwards because I think much of this news was priced in. And despite good earnings, Palantir stock is still in the red. And once again, I think this is leading the market down, like I talked about yesterday. Besides that, I'm not seeing anything else that's too crazy on the news that we haven't talked about either. And then a couple more things worth mentioning is that when it comes to the overall markets, we have Uber, Shopify, and Pfizer, which are announcing their earnings right now. And we'll talk more about those later on. But the main ones, the big ones for today, are going to be AMD and Supermicro after market close. So expect some volatility once those come out. So what do I see for the markets? What do I think is going to likely happen? Like I said before, we need to see SPY reclaim 678 to bounce back up to 681, which could happen later on. But as of right now, we're not ready to do that. I still think we look kind of heavy and we could continue to fall. I'm also eyeing this gap down here at 672. So it's possible we come a little bit lower first to 672. And then we're going to see if we could bounce near that area or not. That's where we have our supports. If we don't hold 672, then I would not rule out the possibility of us dipping towards 670 flats. That's also where we have resistance becoming support. So I think we might dip closer to like 670 to 672 first, and then we'll see if we bounce off that or not. I think that's how it's looking right now because we're looking very heavy in the pre-market. But just to be safe, if you want to be bullish, I think 678 is a very important area of interest. We have to reclaim that to bounce. So as of right now, we're still showing some weakness and there is still some downside risk. Now on the QQQ, this also has some downside risk. Now, I would like to see this reclaim 625 for us to really bounce. If we reclaim 625, there's a gap to fill back up to 629. But if we can't hold above 620, and if 620 fails us, then of course we could be, we could be tipping back down towards 617. We have a gap to fill back down to 617, and there's a good chance we do return towards that, because on the daily time frame, right, this gap, there's a gap at 617, another gap down here at 610. It does not look to me like the downside is done. I think there's still a risk of more downside if this continues. So we're going to be watching 622. If it doesn't hold, look for that 621 to 622 area. If that fails us, there is that risk of us dipping to like 617. We have to reclaim 625 to balance, but as of right now, we're looking kind of heavy. Could dip a little bit more on the QQQ towards 617. We'll see if we bounce there. I will change my mind about being bearish, though, if we reclaim 625, but for now, we're still looking very heavy. The Russell is dipping. We have support at 241. If that does not hold, keep in mind there's a gap at 238 to fill. On ES, we're also rejecting here, could be dipping towards 67.61. We're going to see if we bounce or not. NQ also is dipping. We haven't fully filled the gap yet at 25,563, which makes me suspect there is more downside risk unless we get back above 25,873. Bitcoin is rejecting. We're going to see if we reclaim 106,000. If not, we could be dipping back down towards 101,000. Tesla is showing some weakness, but keep in mind we're holding support. There's support at 450, and then this trend line right here. We love to bounce off this white trend line. We might be dipping towards the trend line, so there's a risk of it dipping a little bit more. Tesla was super strong yesterday, only to get a rejection, so now it could be dipping to like 450, if not this trend line. We'll see if we bounce off this. Nvda is coming down. We need to see if 200 holds. If not, we could be dipping back down towards like 198 and 196. So look for a test of 200. We'll see how it goes from there. Apple's on a bit of a downtrend. We have 265 as our support and 269 as our resistance. We're in the middle. We're going to likely be range bound until we start dipping a bit lower. So keep that in mind. A few more tickers. Palantir pumped and dumped after earnings. We're going to see if 190 holds. If not, we could be dipping to fill the gap at 184. That's leading the market down, at least to some extent. AMD is dipping a bit. I know there's a head and shoulders like pattern right here, but keep in mind it also depends on what happens with the overall earnings. Earnings is going to be coming today. Right here after market close, we have AMD's earnings. So that's going to be very, very key for how we end up moving. So keep that in mind. Coinbase is also rejecting. We're going to see how it ends up responding right here around 312 to 315. So look for more downside. Amazon has an imbalance. The fill might be dipping towards like 244 to 242, and we're going to see if it bounces. Meta is still bearish, could be dipping to 625 or below. Google may also be dipping back down to like 274. And then Microsoft is also showing some weakness, could be dipping closer to about 510 or below. So keep that in mind. The VIX is also breaking out. So we mentioned that there's the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders forming on the VIX. There is a giant gap below, so we're going to see if this goes any higher or not. Could still go a bit higher before it rejects, but we will eventually come back down to fill this gap. But I don't know if the market's ready to really balance yet. We're still looking heavy on SPY and the QQQ, and I still see some risk of downside for now. But watch the resistances I called out to see if we're about to bounce. And for now, we're still looking heavy, so be very careful, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. This is your pre-market update for now, and I'll be back in a couple of hours for another one. Thank you for listening, and peace out.